All right, this is the third and the last for now in a series of, I call them quick blips. And they may be quick for you to consume. They're really time expensive for us to produce, but I wanted to give you something. You're not seeing me because I'm writing a book. The book is called How We Are Made and What to Do About It. And it's going to be one of the most radically different health books you've ever read in your life. I guarantee it. So watch for that. Not sure when it will come out. It's keeping me pretty busy, which is why you're not seeing me around. I think it's, the old saying is light a candle instead of cursing the darkness. I'm pretty good at cursing the darkness. I'm also trying to light more candles. This book is my big candle. And anybody that gets this book and reads this and can't preserve their health isn't thinking clearly and not trying. This is you have never seen a book like this, honestly. I'm not pushing vitamins or any other nonsense. I'm not pushing myself as a medical or health guru. I'm just putting this book out there. It is the, well, you'll see. You'll see. It's quite different. All right, so let's talk about Fauci's First Fraud. Remember that book, Fauci's First Fraud? And I kept saying, look, guys, Fauci's been running the deadly virus scam forever. And he started with AIDS. That was his first experiment, his first experiment in psychological operations. And then he had, the Ebola and Zika, and then of course he killed the world with COVID. How many? Let's remember how many people died as a result, not of any disease, but as a result of starving, deaths of despair, suicide, a lot of suicide, alcoholism spiking, deaths by alcohol, deaths by drug addiction, spiking to the moon, child abuse. Every evil in our world got fuel poured on the fire thanks to Fauci's COVID fraud. Well, someone actually wrote a book about Fauci's Ebola fraud. How do you like that? I didn't know about it. 10 years old, I missed it. But here's the guy. We're going to hear about it.
Joining us now is Cherno Ba, editor of the Africanist Press, and also we can put this element up on the screen, the author of the tremendous book, The Ebola Outbreak in West Africa, Corporate Gangsters, Multinationals, and Rogue Politicians. We spoke with Cherno a year or two ago about the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. It's really a masterpiece. I would recommend it to everybody. It's also a fairly short book, so there was no excuse that I hadn't read it yet. But it runs through the history of kind of multinational corporate and colonial involvement in medical research in Africa, and then leads up into Ebola and the response. And I'll let you talk about it a little bit because we're going to talk about some other things in this segment. But you basically demonstrate with authority that the story that we're told about how the Ebola outbreak happened is ludicrous, has no evidentiary basis, and that the more likely cause is the shoddy lab that was doing Ebola research in Sierra Leone. And anything you want to add about that?
Yes, it's been 10 years now since I published that book, or since I wrote that book. And it's interesting to see that the conversation that we started 10 years ago still is relevant today, especially when we talk about COVID and the pandemic. It was 5 years before COVID. At the time when the outbreak happened, the official narrative was that the outbreak started in Guinea, and they identified Emily Wamonu, a 2-year-old or less than 2-year-old child, an 18-year-old boy, as the index case of the outbreak. They alleged that the child had participated in the hunting and grilling of a bat. So my book challenges that, what we call the official narrative, raising questions that would have allowed people to look into the biodefense research operation that was happening in eastern Sierra Leone, dating back to 2004.
And now we've got Bobby Kennedy. He's head of HHS. That's a great thing. It really is. Some good things are happening. Here he is talking about chemtrails. Remember, we've been running stuff on chemtrails since the 90s, and everybody was happy to tell me I was nuts. Well, here's the head of Health and Human Services talking about the reality of chemtrails.
Well, they called us conspiracy nuts. They called us crazy for exposing, of course, what was going on with chemtrails over America. Well, now RFK Jr. just publicly named the government agency behind most of it, and he says it's been going on for years. These are crimes against humanity, of course. The Vigilant Fox has, by the way, done a great job of cataloging RFK's promises before he became HHS secretary on a whole host of issues, but specifically this issue, he responded to an ex post last year before taking office, and he said this: we are going to stop this crime. He's specifically talking about these chemtrails. We are going to stop this crime. So he was emphatic about this. Well, so yesterday, RFK Jr. sat down with Dr. Phil, and he kind of shocked us all when he answered a question from a woman named Emily. She wanted answers about the toxins being sprayed over America every day. And here's what he said. Watch.
And my biggest concern is the stratospheric aerosol injections that are continuously peppered on us every day. Bromium, aluminum, strontium, it's sprayed in our skies all day long. And I know you've talked to Dane Wigington about this. He seems to be one of the experts in the field.
Is there a question?
Yes. How do we stop it?
That is not happening in my agency. We don't do that. It's done, we think, by DARPA. And a lot of it now is coming out of the jet fuel.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Those materials are put in jet fuel. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it. We're bringing on somebody who's going to think only about that, find out who's doing it, and holding them accountable.
Okay, and then we got Bobby Kennedy riding his white horse to the rescue. However, unfortunately, there's something wrong with that boy. And here's an example of that. We have a fellow named ttacharya who was part of the Great Barrington Declaration. I think heroic. I think Bobby's heroic. I think on the health front, they've done amazing things. But here's a little disappointing take. We all know of Bobby Kennedy's derangement when it comes to Israel and Gaza. He seems to think the Gazans are the most, what did he say, the most indulged people on earth. I think he's maybe walked that one back by now. I hope so. But anyway, apparently, if you're working for Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump, you better zig heil when Israel comes around. And look at what Bhattacharya has done.
Okay, folks. So remember how when Jay Bhattacharya was appointed head of the NIH, we thought, oh, they're finally something we can get behind. How bad could this be? Certainly, there's no way that Trump's subservience to Israel can interfere at the NIH, could it? Well, here we go. Glenn Greenwald, under new guidelines released by the National Institute of Health, any medical researchers will have all funds terminated if they support a boycott of Israel. They can support a boycott of any other country or even other U.S. states, just not Israel. So here's the highlighted text. Sorry, I got to full screen this here. Effective with the issuance of this notice, the following terms and conditions applies. Recipients must comply with all applicable federal anti-discrimination laws material to the government's payment decisions for purposes of 31 U.S.C. blah, 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 whatever the numbers are. Discriminatory prohibited boycott means refusing to deal, cutting commercial relations, or otherwise limiting commercial relations specifically with Israeli companies or companies doing business with Israel or authorized by, licensed by, or organized under the laws of Israel to do business. Wow. By accepting the grant award, recipients certifying that they do not engage and will not, during the term of this award, engage in a discriminatory prohibited boycott, obviously specified Israel above. A research institute could be close to developing treatments or cures for cancer or Alzheimer's, but will lose NIH grants unless they certify they don't support a boycott of Israel. I was happy Dr. Jay Bhattacharya was made NIH director given his free speech advocacy, and yet, ... Yet indeed. So Li Fong had a great piece about this, and encourage you guys to check out Li Fong's Substack. See, Li Fong does independent media the right way.
Yes.
He's the guy who keeps the standards high.
All right, so that was a run of health news. First, we got a little taste of somebody who wrote a book on the frauds involved in the Ebola crisis. That was a hard fraud to decipher because it's happening in Africa and in remote kind of rural areas of Africa, and I didn't have any into that, but it just smelled. And somebody has written a book. We've got another validation, verification that chemtrails are not your imagination. They are real and they are toxic. It's just a fact. And then finally, we got the very, 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 very disappointing performance from Bhattacharya, joining Bobby and Trump in basically Israel Zionist genocide derangement syndrome. I have a little inside story about Bhattacharya. As you know, I've written more than one book on various subjects that should be of interest to him. With a co-author, I wrote a book on the Nuremberg Code. We also did a book on what's it called? Fauci's First Fraud. We wrote the book What the Nurses Saw, which is doing very well. Check it out on Amazon. Over 440 reviews, and that means many, 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 many thousands of people have read it. That book is a hidden bestseller, and I say hidden because good luck ever seeing me on any of the $1 million podcasts on that subject. Maybe someday they'll break down and let me on. I don't know, but so far it ain't happening. But in any event, I've I've corresponded with Professor Bhattacharya, MD, Stanford University, and I admired him. And I tried to get him interested in Fauci's First Fraud. He had zero interest. Like I said, I'll send you a copy. Not interested even in receiving a copy. How about What the Nurses Saw? The fact that perhaps hundreds of thousands of people were medically murdered during the COVID panic, well documented by the nurses who were in the hospitals observing what was going on, experienced veteran nurses who knew the difference between fraud and medicine. I said, would you like a copy of that book? Was not interested. So I sent him 2 copies anyway, because that's just how I am. And didn't acknowledge receiving them, not interested in them. I thought that was a bit strange. Not sure what's up with old Bhattacharya, but the fact that he's doing this Israel Uber Alles thing in NIH is just insane. So anyway, this is the third in a series of 3 of these programs where I take little clips and let you get right to the point right away and perhaps surprise you with things, because it's hard to find this information even if you watch hundreds of hours of YouTube. It's usually buried, in the middle of a 2-hour program. But here it is all laid out for you. I am not going to be around much. I am working on a book called How You Are Made and What to Do About It. A genuinely revolutionary book on health and medicine, and it's a big claim. I make it with total confidence that those who read it are going to go, holy smokes, how was this kept from us for all these years? Anyway, it's a lot of work rewriting the practice of medicine from scratch, so it's taking me a bit of time and a bit of effort. So if you don't see brass check stuff from me, please give me some space. I love that. Give me space. Have some tolerance. I'm trying to send out good stuff every now and then, but pretty much I am swamped. But today we decided to devote the afternoon to putting together the series of 3 programs. This is being the last one. So to everyone who supports us, thank you so much. You buy me a little bit of freedom and time to be able to do things that I think are valuable. And I think obviously you agree the things that I do are worth doing, and they're not being done by anybody else. So there we have it.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.